of the great challenges of reading the Bible is our tendency to simplify these stories into nice and clean bedtime tales. The story of Noah is a perfect example of that. A boat full of animals and rainbows and doves, you can start to think that it's a kid's story. My kids even have a floating Noah's Ark toy that they play with in the bathtub. I'm thankful my kids are learning these stories, but the story of Noah's Ark is hardly a child's fairy tale. In fact, this story captures one of the most difficult and complex tensions of the Bible. There are few days more dark and painful than those in which God's judgment on sin is finally forced upon humanity. Those first drops of rain were a realization that our lives do not escape His awareness. God is not willing to lose His creation. What does God do when all but one lone family on earth has rebelled against Him? What does a creator do when His creation has become a curse to itself? How dark is the day when the earth can best be described by its chaotic violence? By chapter 6 of Genesis, the seed of rebellion, planted in Adam and Eve's single act of disobedience, had grown into a world of horrific violence and brutality. Cain's murder of his brother Abel was just the start. The whole earth had become a place of rebellion. Genesis presents creation as a place filled with God's presence, but we're now told corruption fills the earth. We too often miss the tension of this story, but Genesis sets the full weight of it on us. What should God do? With His creation in full rebellion against Him, and each new generation deepening the suffering and injustice upon the next, what is God to do? Can we really expect Him to do nothing? Does God wipe His hands clean and walk away from it, leaving us to suffer under the brokenness we inherit and then go on to ourselves perpetrate? Is this the story? The world spiraling into worse corruption and violence? Or does God step in? Does He bring justice? If you have ever had to confront the injustice of a friend or a child who you deeply love, you know how difficult this tension can be. And you know that walking away is never the loving thing to do. Instead, we enter into the full complexity of it. And so too, God makes the gut-wrenching decision to draw a line. This violence can go no further. For the good of humanity and creation, and out of His love for them, God chooses to directly involve Himself and stop it. This is one of the great tensions of the Bible. How can God be both just and loving? How can He rescue His creation when it's His creation that has rebelled? Maybe the surprising part of this story is not that God would put an end to humanity's violence, but that He was not willing to put an end to humanity. God's commitment to His creation is far greater than we would have expected, great enough that Noah himself is saved, and Noah's family would take up the original calling, God's purpose of filling the earth and walking with Him. I think the beginning of Genesis suggests something that we each deeply know is true. This world is not as it should be. We are not who we were created to be. And if we are honest with ourselves, we both suffer and contribute to this world's brokenness. This same sin which invaded the garden and rallied the world into rebellion, this sin is within us. The world needs to be rescued. We need to be rescued. And what we discover in Genesis is a God not willing to abandon us, even when we have abandoned Him. Genesis tells the story of a God who promises to redeem his creation. It shows us a God who is deeply a part of this story. We are called to listen, to see that from the beginning, this is God's story. It's the story of how God is rescuing his people. It's the story of how one righteous person can become the hope of a new humanity. Listen.